Happy New Year. I want to share some perspective with you on where I believe we've come in 2011 in independent Scientology and where I think we're going in 2012 and beyond. First and foremost, this year, 2011, was a huge year for delivery. Just here alone, we created a number of auditors and solo auditors and got them back in the chair and practicing Scientology. And just people who I'm intimately connected with and know on a personal basis are doing the same thing. Karen in Los Angeles, Ingrid in Los Angeles, Trey in Los Angeles, Les and Anita up in the Northwest, Renata and Claudio Lugli in Italy, and Jim Logan, who's been roving around the world getting solo auditors retrained and back in the chair. Each one of those people, just the ones that I'm in regular communication with, represent dozens of others. So you can, extrapolate it from that. But we hear every day new wins and successes of people who had given up on Scientology or felt that they were not allowed to or couldn't practice Scientology, who are now practicing independently. And so that is the most important thing, always will be the most important thing, and it was a great year for that. 2012, because of all the new people that are practicing and having tremendous wins, 2012 promises to be even bigger because it just keeps spreading out. 2011 was a really good year in terms of the initial major targets that I had set for myself and was trying to accomplish with my blog and what I do in terms of group activity in addition to delivery. And that is, from the very beginning, I felt that to make Scientology more able to be practiced independently and to be desirable to the public at large, there would have to be a differentiation made in the mind of the public between the corporate radical Church of Scientology and independent Scientology, or the philosophy itself. And as part of that differentiation, there'd have to be a differentiation made between L. Ron Hubbard, the founder of the subject, and David Miscavige, the dictator of corporate radical Scientology. And this year, I believe there was a tremendous amount of progress made on that score. A Pulitzer Prize winning journalist, Lawrence Wright from the New Yorker, made that distinction in a very broadly read piece that he did on Scientology. Hugh Urban did a book, who's a religious scholar who recognized the vitality of the independent movement. Janet Reitman, who wrote a more popular book, did the same thing. And Reitman went on to do a series of interviews where she expanded on that very point because the media and public were interested in that. And that is this distinction between corporate Church of Scientology, independent Scientology. And, furthermore, she, on her own, and I thought this was very heartening, on her own, she came up with, observed what the real basic problem was with corporate Scientology. She put it in terms of the church would have to change or die. And underlying that was what she called their fundamentalist attitude, which was very wisely observed as their literalness with which they approach the subject in life. Now, anybody who studies Scientology extensively knows that from the very beginning, L. Ron Hubbard, from Dianetics to SOS, through the Route to Clear, and up even to his final years in trying to undercut with KTL, L. Ron Hubbard was attempting to give people the ability to think conceptually and not literally, not to think through words, not to think through pictures, but to think conceptually, which opens up a whole world of creativity, opens up a whole world of spiritual attainment. He was trying to unleash people from this fixation on literalness. And that really truly is the distinction, probably the most important distinction between corporate radical Scientology and independent Scientology. Independent Scientologists can think conceptually. If you're within corporate Scientology and you do somehow sneak through and attain that ability to think conceptually, it's not going to last for long, because ultimately you're forced by that culture to live in this behavioralist, literalist community. That you know, some arbitrary line du jour picked out by a guy who's a complete sociopath is driven down the lines of the organization right down to the public to make you think literally about the subject. And when you do that, you lose the workability of the subject, because it defeats the entire purpose of it. It makes one other determined. It makes one affect. When the subject makes one cause and makes one self-determined and pan-determined. So this is a very important distinction that's been made. And the reason I go off onto this in such detail is that aside from the importance of delivery, which will always be number one importance, second in importance, I think, for the future of independent Scientology, is that we demonstrate and that we live and show by the way we practice Scientology and by the way we live that we never forget and we never regress to how corporate Scientology nearly lost the entire subject, and that is extremism, radicalism, fundamentalism, literalism. You know, extremism has been the bane of humanity from the outset. It's been the regressing factor, the destructive factor throughout history, in politics, in religion, in government, in organization, in communities. It's the great middle path. It's the people who have brought the extremes together, the people who have created safe harbor for the extremes to become more rational, that have moved humanity forward. And I think it's important that we keep our eye on that ball. You know, a year ago we had some relatives down, a cousin-in-law and his parents, and this cousin-in-law was 12 years old. He was from inner city Philadelphia, really bright kid. You know, we went fishing and all, and one night we were around the dinner table and the adults were talking about the 2012 scare. The Mayan calendar runs out in 2012, and a lot of people talk about how that signifies that the world's going to end. In the middle of this conversation, the kid's just listening, and he looks at me at one point and he says, "I got a question. If the Mayans were so smart and had so much foresight, how is it that their culture went extinct?" And I said, "You know what, that's a good question." And I thought about it, and you could ask that question or a similar piercing question of any extremist position and take the pins out from under it. The Great Middle Path, Scientology, was created in pursuit of that which the Buddha had accomplished. It's right in the Phoenix Lectures. It was the Great Middle Path. It works best in a measured, tolerant, compassionate environment where the intention is solely to help the person in front of one to move on up a little higher. And as long as we don't ever forget these lessons of what happened, not only with the Church of Scientology, but with our culture and with our evolution of our culture and our civilization, that extremism, radicalism, fundamentalism has been the bane. If we don't ever forget that, and we keep our compassion, we keep our tolerance, we keep our equanimity, I don't think there's any way we can lose. And I think that if we stay focused on that and continue to deliver. What happens in 2012, you know, I think it's going to exceed everybody's expectations. It's going to be a fabulous year. Happy New Year.